Good morning, all. My name is Catherine Blanchette. I am the Deputy Project Manager for the Open Science 101 curriculum, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and how that works. I am a federal contractor with KBR, and joining me today is George Churchwell from Mount Tam Innovations and Gleb Luglowski from Raccoon Gang, and we are all excited to be here, so we're going to get started. So open science, this is where it begins. Is the principle and practice of making research products and processes available to all while respecting diverse cultures, maintaining security and privacy, and fostering collaborations, reproducibility, and equity. As we think about the need to increase the open science practices across the United States, locally, nationally, and perhaps globally, we wanted to dive into creating a collaborative culture, enabling the research to be more citable. We know that it has a bigger impact. It increases transparency and ultimately becomes more inclusive. And inclusive science means more collaborative projects, more equitable systems, and increased participation. So where we started was back in 2013 with the White House Office of Science and Technology, the OSTP. Through their efforts, they created a policy memorandum that directed U.S. federal agencies with research and development expenditures above $100 million to develop public access plans to support increased participation, increased public access to the results of that research. And in the same year, on the same day, Executive Order 1364-2, the Making Open and Machine Readable the New Default for Government Information and Open Data Policy memorandum, also known as M1313, was released. And these two documents issued guidance on how the government agencies ought to be making their data open and machine readable. So as we worked through the years and moving up into 2017, by this time all agencies completed public access plans in compliance with the 2013 memorandum. So fast forwarding to 2018, NASA released their strategy for data management and computing. With this, it was designed to enable transformational open science through continuous evolution of science data and computing systems for NASA's Science Mission Directorate. Part of this strategy was to develop and implement capabilities to enable open science, which turned out to be the predecessor to TOPS. Going forward to 2020, the U.S. government ORCID consortium was launched. Through the Department of Energy and other affiliated organizations came together with the intent of adopting and integrating and easing the processes to integrate with, with ORCID. The consortium is a mechanism for organizations to become ORCID members, and it provides administrative, technical support, as well as a community of practice. So moving into 2021, we've got the NASA SP released the SP41, which was spearheaded by the Science Mission Directorate. The policy describes how any scientific information produced using funding from SMD is shared. And with that, we have the catalyst for the Transform to Open Science initiative. There we go. Which started in 2023, the year of open science. As declared by the White House, this initiative was designed to advance the policy, the infrastructure, the awards, and the community within open science. Policy focusing on scientific information to better enable the activation of open science, the infrastructure, S&D coordinated existing and new data, and computing capabilities that could be reused by all the SMD science divisions. And then funding. NASA provided the funding to support and incentivize open science activities via the research opportunities in space and earth sciences, otherwise known as the ROSES grants. And then last but not least through outreach. And that's where TOPS comes in, and that's where OS 101 comes in. So I'm getting there. So with TOPS, it is a 5-year initiative to accelerate the adoption of open science. And the goals are to increase the understanding and adoption of what are the principles and techniques of this thought, broaden the participation of historically excluded communities, making extra effort to reach out to those communities, and ultimately accelerate major scientific discoveries. So this was created in with 4 subdivisions: engagement, capacity, incentives, and coordination. And diving into capacity sharing, our team worked on and created, with the help of the community, the Open Science 101 curriculum. Over 200 subject matter experts from the different scientific organizations, universities, centers within NASA worked together to develop the data management plan, the tools and best practices, and with their help, the curriculum increases the visibility of their science, provides the instruction on how to do that, and lists out all of the basic requirements needed to conduct open science. At the end, they have the opportunity to earn a badge. So the curriculum was designed to be both virtual and instructor-led. It initially started as virtual, as a massive open online course, leading or using Open edX as their platform. And each of the 5 modules designed introduced a new topic within that theme of open science. So it started with the ethos, the open tools, open data, open code, and open results. And at the end of completing all 5 of the virtual modules, the participants received a gold badge that also is awarded to the folks that participated as we furthered into this process into the instructor-led workshops. So this is where George and Gleep comes in. So with that, I'll pass it over to George.
Thank you, Catherine. So one of the things that was important in the curriculum that Catherine has just shared and the content that was created is getting credibility in the information when a student succeeds and is given a badge. And as a result, ORCID was provided to create trusted markers for successful completion. And what I mean by that is to have the ability for ORCID to identify within its record in an automated fashion the successful completion of a badge, which we made on the Open edX system. So the systems are tied together, and I'll show you that and how that works together. Secondly, on top of that, the username and password server for the TOPS program itself uses ORCID as its primary authentication interface. So what that means really is that we are committed within this NASA program at putting ORCID front and center. You have to log into the ORCID system and have an ORCID record in order to use the TOPS program. So the 2 pieces that are really critical here are that we're using ORCID as a primary authentication server. And then on top of that, we're using ORCID to identify the successful completion in an automated transfer. So the servers themselves are actually communicating in the background. And when you complete a badge, it is updating the ORCID record through automation. So let's go ahead and move the next slide. So here we'll take a look at that in a little more detail. what happens as Catherine mentioned, after you complete the 5 modules and complete all the testing, you will be delivered a badge, and you'll see this in a moment. It comes from a vendor that we have in a server that's called Pearson Credly, and they offer badging services. But when that badge is offered, our Open edX server not only then indicates the badging that occurred from the Credly system, but then through an automated interface sends a message of successful completion to ORCID. And that is then marked in the ORCID record of the student. And remember, the student had to log in through the ORCID system. So we definitely have the student's information in ORCID, and we update that record in an automated fashion to indicate that the NASA course was completed and that you've successfully achieved a TOPS badge. Any questions or anything at this point? Or I could
Not yet, George.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the flow so you can see how we've integrated these systems. First, when you come into our NASA TOP system, you will then sign in using your ORCID ID. And ORCID IDs are actually the primary username that we're using within our TOP server. Go ahead and move to the next slide. On initial contact with the server, you're going to register the ORCID ID and connect it and authorize its access through ORCID. As you can see here, a button will come up and it'll say that you have authorized access to the Open Science 101 system that you will grant. This allows you then to use the TOPS 101 system. So, for all of you to note, this allows us to have a full engagement with ORCID because all of our users are using ORCID IDs as they operate within our server environment. And thus also all of the records then can be updated when a person completes our training back to their ORCID system, right, using that ORCID ID and the keys that are provided, which Glebe will talk about shortly. So let's move to the next slide. When you subsequently return to use the training as you're completing modules, you'll always be greeted by the ORCID ID sign-in, and you'll place your ORCID ID, as you can see there, and that will get you into the system and bring up the TOPS environment. Technology-wise, we didn't want to get too deeply technical into it, but if some of you were wondering what all of these technologies are, the authentication technology is called single sign-on, or SSO. And that's what allows us to talk to the ORCID system. And the ORCID team and our team took the Open edX server, and we used an SSO protocol to allow that to occur. Let's move to the next slide. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Glebe here in a moment, but to kind of show you a really high-level view of what's going on here, we have a learning server that's an open source platform from Open edX. It was part of a Harvard program, and you could look that up. It's an open source platform that's doing and executing all of the learning for the users. And as I mentioned, we've tied it so that the users that are getting access to the Open edX server use ORCID for authentication and login. So we're logging in with ORCID, and ORCID is our credibility and authentication server. So you can see the ORCID service below. When a person completes the Open edX course and is capable of then achieving success, that success is recorded in Pearson's Credly badging server. But then we use a communication, which Glebe's about to describe to you, that will allow the API, or application programming interface communication, between these 3 servers will be used to set up and synchronize the Credly badging service with the ORCID service so that the student's record is updated. So we can move to the next slide. And Glebe, I'm going to turn it over to you to step through the flow.
Thank you so much,
Any
George.
questions or anything? Anybody right now? Are we good?
I
No
believe,
questions yet.
Okay.
yeah, they might be answered in Q&A session.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Basically, as George described, we have a several steps flow to accommodate the use case that we are handling there. And it involves three parties of services that are independent from one another. And our OpenEdX LMS acts as a mediator between ORCID ID, Credly, and provides actually the desired service to users. So the first step in the process is basically all users should authenticate via SSO. We are using authentication endpoints from ORCID that are provided with membership API, but also you can use the same without being a member, just getting some information. There might be some limitations from ORCID side to provide it to your service, but this is the basic flow where you would want to use ORCID. It's basically get some information for registering user in your system. And we are asking about permissions to get some data from the profile and also to edit some of the profile data afterwards, after the learning was finished on the first step when user authenticates initially in the system. We can move to the next slide. As a second step, user actually learns on our OpenEdX platform in LMS and actually completes all these 5 modules that Catherine presented, getting knowledge and also passing an exams at the end of each module. We can move on. So after all modules were completed and all exams were successfully finished, LMS will push a new query via API to Credly service that is third party to ORCID and LMS, and it will just ask Credly to grant a badge to user. Credly has its own algorithm on how they determine to which profiles the badge should be issued, how to reach users, and so on. So we basically providing enough information for Credly to find users who need to be targeted in order to accepting the badge that was issued from our service. And as external ID for this communication between Credly and OpenEdX, we are using actually ORCID ID. And eventually we are having the way in our service to connect response from Credly with internal profile in our OpenEdX LMS system and with ORCID ID profile by using this unique identifier from ORCID. We can move on to the next slide. And this is the main part of our synchronization that wasn't done like a lot before, but our system is acting as a main synchronization point between Credly and ORCID ID. And eventually, through our system, we are pushing all the details about Credly badge with link of proof, with details about who has issued this badge to ORCID qualifications. We are using this, we are executing it by using membership API. And with the help of ORCID ID team, we were able to streamline the process for user to provide actually us enough requirements to be able to not only read some information from ORCID profile, but also put some information into it. And eventually, user will have not just a qualification inside their own ORCID profile. They will have approved qualification that it was actually signed and it's actually were approved by API integration that was set up officially between ORCID ID LMS and curated by NASA. We can move on to the next slide. And there are a couple of showcases on what actually was added to default interfaces in OpenEdX LMS platform to show that there is actually a connection to ORCID and to ORCID service and ORCID profile was developed. So first of all, we have added this section on the profile side where user can see their ORCID ID if they have their account synchronized with ORCID. And as George mentioned before, there are no other way as of now for the platform to register except actually logging in with your ORCID ID account. Therefore, every user on the platform will have it. And also on the same page, you can see in assignments in my badge section, the view badge card with actually credential from Credly. And this is just additional point to show that we have OpenEdX system act as the main synchronization service in the middle between the disconnecting ORCID and some external services, in this case, Credly. We can move on. Of course, it is very important. It is very important to allow users manage their privacy, and therefore it is possible to unlink ORCID account from your OpenEdX system. And basically, if you want to deactivate your account in your system or remove the connection to ORCID ID, you can do this manually using your account settings page. And it is very important point in actually being compliant to GDPR, and our platform is compliant to it. We can move on.
What, Glebe, I'm gonna give
Yes,
you
George.
one talking point here that you can add to this, and maybe this will bring up some questions to everybody, and you could talk about this is for all of you to note, and everything you see in the picture and that Glebe's been talking about, the OpenEdX server is an open source, and I put this in the notes, but just make sure everybody understands. It is a Python-based open source, and as a result, that's what enabled Glebe's team to very quickly change the code, which would have been difficult if we had bought an actual product, to very quickly change the code and then make the changes that were needed to make this integration possible. I think you did in a couple weeks, Glebe. And then on top of that, we also added other edge cases where we had to do badging and things that did not occur for users that went directly into the system, that took instruction from another source that attained their skills. And then the badging itself had to be done manually. But again, because it's Python code, that enabled us to quickly change things and build things. So you could, any of you can ask questions about that, but Glebe was the one that put that together.
Yeah, that's totally true, George. And there are already existing backends on the Python code in some libraries implemented for ORCID ID. So if you have service in Python, it is pretty easily to integrate with ORCID for authentication. And then basically ORCID provides a lot of useful documentation on their side on how to work with the API. You can try it out on Sandbox first, and then eventually you will be able to get production credentials and run it on production in really, really short periods of time. And as George mentioned, we were working on this complete integration, I believe, from 2 to 3 weeks, where we actually got it implemented. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of possibilities right now available to implement such kind of API integration with all these libraries that provide like generic access for ORCID API or already compatible with ORCID way of implementing OAuth2 authentication. Thank you. Yeah, I believe that's all. Catherine, maybe you can do the final word.
There's a couple questions that came in, although it's in Spanish.
Yep. We'll get to the questions as
Okay.
soon as the presentation is over. But thank you, George.
Oh, thank you. So, wrapping it up, we took us about a little over 10 years to get to this point. We went live with the curriculum on December 6th of 2023, so last year, and immediately made a couple tweaks to the system, and then let it ride for the rest of the year. And at this point, we have over 2,000 individuals and participants of the virtual and ILT training courses that have been badged. And we're finding that it's working pretty well. We're pretty satisfied with how this process is working. So we hope this information is helpful for you. And please, we welcome any questions at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, George. As we've got 30 minutes for questions, so I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to gather their thoughts and go ahead and submit them to the Q&A. In the meantime, I do want to share with everyone that if your organization has an integration with ORCID, you do have the opportunity to submit your use case for consideration to present at a future webinar. So I've dropped that link in the chat. I think there's a question in the chat, but it's quite ORCID specific. So Shivendra from ORCID is going to be responding to that. But essentially it was asking, does NSF anticipate in the future using / depending on an ORCID ID for valid information about a researcher's scientific credentials and activities in proposals for NASA funding, as opposed to requiring a biosketch document? So I think in general, the question is just wondering if there's going to be a change in requirements as people start submitting for funding and stuff. I don't know, Catherine, do you have any thoughts on this specifically?
No, I do not, but I welcome my team members if they are on the line. CJ or Paul, I'll field that to you. Or you can drop it in the chat.
I don't know if Paul is on the line. Paul, are you on the line? I don't think so, but I was going to, that's a good opportunity. I'm just rereading the question again. Does NSF anticipate in the future using? So I'm not sure with NSF, I can't speak directly to them, but when it comes to NASA funding, the reason I asked if Paul was on is because he heads up leading people on creating their open science data management plans and things like that. So as Catherine had mentioned, when it comes to applying for funding, this is something that is becoming a requirement here at NASA. You have to have some link with open science data management plans, and it really does make your application stronger. Oh, you meant NASA, no worries. It really does make your application stronger if you can show that you've already started on that path. It definitely is always a highlight to show that you've taken extra training and things like that. You can include that in your biosketch document that they do have you have upload. But yeah, I think having an ORCID ID, you can also do, I don't know if anyone does Linktree. I know my partner was just setting up a Linktree that links directly to his ORCID. So you can go and see all of his pages and stuff. But it certainly does not hurt to have all of this stuff. I know that when they review proposals, because I have reviewed proposals, so I know kind of what we're looking for sometimes. Anything that you can highlight with open science is really great, but also it's becoming more and more of a necessity within NASA. And the thing that I always remind folks of is NASA is a government agency, which means this is tax dollar funded, which means the data, open science, it's your data as a taxpayer. So we want to share that and we want to advance science. So the old saying, if you want to get there fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we are really embracing that with open science. So yes, absolutely. Get the extra training, include it with your ORCID, link your ORCID in your biosketch. All of those things can help strengthen things.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thanks, CJ. And just for the record, CJ is our project manager on the Open Science 101 curriculum. So she is leading the charge for this program. And she's with me here at NASA Ames Research Center. So we appreciate her jumping in and answering that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the very detailed answer, CJ. That was great. My next question is for George and Glebe specifically. How straightforward did you find the integration, build, and testing process and ORCID's API documentation? Do you have any advice for organizations currently planning or developing an integration?
Go ahead, Glebe. You got that.
Sure. Yeah, actually, the documentation is really great. It is having a lot of sources both on main website for ORCID as well as in GitHub. So GitHub repository includes a lot of examples on how integration with ORCID API may be happening, what data can be used to put in some fields, and basically how you might design your API algorithm for communicating with ORCID. I would say that the most valuable thing that helped us integrating with ORCID was communication with ORCID team, who were very supportive at the time. And I believe it is actually like the main part is that ORCID team is always ready to guide you on how to make the integration even better, on what to choose from the options when you're trying to understand what scope of token you need to request from users initially, and other points. And for example, we were some discussion having around what is the credential, the Credly page, what the type of achievement it should be in ORCID record. And eventually we decided to make it a qualification because it seems to be really it was the right answer to this eventually, and basically we made this decision in communication with ORCID team. So thank you, it was very helpful.
I'll add one little thing to that that's kind of connected to it. We did have a time where there were some people that ended up completing the course through manually taking a test, but were not in the exchange of information because they weren't on the server. So they had to be manually loaded or manually load ORCID themselves. And I'll just give this as a piece of information. The automatic loaded markers that came from the system tended to have a higher credibility, even with the users that manually loaded that could load that. And there was a preference to have all of the records be loaded through the server, because the credibility just appeared higher. So this is for all of you to think about this. If you allow the systems to do your ORCID record update, because you can do that manually, but having the system do it and putting the credential in from NASA had an effect on the people's value of the credential. So that's just something for all of you to note. I mean, I think, I don't know what everyone's doing here, but when you can do something and have the systems update the ORCID record automatically, I think it gives a higher credibility to the record update.
Yeah, thanks, George. And I think what you're referring to is something that we here at ORCID refer to as a trust marker. You know, when you're looking at somebody's ORCID record and you see that they didn't manually upload the data, but it came directly from NASA, you know, that gives a level of trust to their record. So thank you for adding that. And
Yeah.
Glebe, we're glad to hear that the integration process went relatively smoothly and that ORCID staff was there to help support you, you know, which is one of the great benefits of ORCID membership is that our team is here to help you get your integration up and going. My next question is for Catherine. And I was just wondering, do you have any feedback or insights you can share on what the impact of the NASA TOPS program is having on open science, not only around the US, but worldwide?
Awesome. That's a great question. We love results, and we're always measured by what is the impact. And I'll give a high level statement and then turn it over to my team in case they want to make any additions, because there's a couple of them on here, and from Marshall Space Flight Research Center as well as from Ames. So y'all can just jump in when you're ready, when you think it's appropriate. But so because since our launch on December 6th, we have seen over 2,000 individuals be badged within the system. And we have also seen over 20 different instructor-led workshops being hosted. And these are from our TOPS champions, grantees that have been awarded the funding and have the initiative and the drive and the plan to promote the TOPS initiative amongst their communities, locally, nationally, and globally. So we're very pleased with the effort that's been made and the results. And we're entering in the year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5 of the initiative. So we're expecting the same cadence and the same speed, if not more, with that particular drive for getting the word out, capacity sharing, engagement. And I'll turn it over, maybe start with CJ. CJ, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, all great information and good question. The only thing I would like to add to that, well, a couple of things is, as Catherine said, we're above our targets actually for how many people we wanted to get through the system in the first year as we were just pushing this out. So we've already met our target before we've had it open for a full year. So the team has been doing a great job with that. But one of the great things about the MOOC, the Massive Open Online course, is that you can do it at your own pace. So in addition to that number, we also have many, many people that are currently taking the course but haven't quite completed it yet. So those numbers are going to increase as those folks complete it. Also remember, this is international. We have people badged from all over the world. And we really do put an effort into not only speaking with people in the US and universities and things of that nature, but one of my passions that I work a lot on is international collaborations with other space agencies and things like that. And I'm trying to get all of them to get their folks, their scientists, even their management to do this open science training. So it really is a massive, massive effort there.
Excellent. Thanks, CJ. Okay, that's probably good. Kimberly, how about that?
Yeah, no, that's great. I know there's a few of my colleagues here at ORCID that are going through the course, and I actually completed it at the end of September. And I'm curious if anyone on the call, if you have done the course or in the process of doing it, or it's on your to-do list to do, if you want to go ahead and send a reaction, whether in the chat or in the Zoom toolbar, just to let us know that you're actively working on that course. It's nice to see all that. I have to say, it was a fantastic course. I really liked the how self-paced it was. You know, when I had the time, I was able to get in there and get through it, and the little modules with the different quizzes to test your knowledge, super helpful. It was a lot of fun, and I was influenced by the NASA swag that was advertised if you were one of the first participants to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I forget if it was covered already. One of the things I love seeing is that with the way we do the badging, you can actually share it on your LinkedIn. So I love going on to LinkedIn and seeing all of the people who have done it share their badge. And you know, when you go to their ORCID page, it's right there front and center. So it's really cool. And with taking the course, where one of the great things that you can do is leave us feedback through our GitHub, and we try to make improvements all the time. We set aside time every week to go through that, and that's a collaborative effort between Ames and Marshall, really bringing the centers together. And also updates that are happening. We have a Spanish-speaking version that'll be live soon as well. So we're working on that. And you know, just getting everything out there to more and more people.
That's awesome. Really awesome to hear that a Spanish speaking version is coming out. I'll have to share that with our colleagues that speak Spanish. They'll definitely be interested in that. And
Yeah,
it kind of leads to my
absolutely.
next question. As we talk about more and more people getting involved, have you had any interest from other federal agencies on almost emulating the NASA TOPS integration for the badging of courses they may be running, or running some sort of similar workshop type application?
Yeah, we have. So other folks that I talk to are super interested in this. I, of course, selfishly say, start with ours so you can see what it's like. I am a manager, so I'm always managing money and looking at budgets and everything. And one of the things I tell people is, hey, don't waste time reinventing the wheel. Take a look at what we did as a starting platform, as a starting point, and see how it's going to work for your organization. And if you want to implement something totally different or something similar, we can already help connect you with folks at ORCID or Credly or whoever, and you can use that as a starting point. So if people are interested, you know, George and Mount Tam and Raccoon Gang, super, super helpful. ORCID, super helpful. Credly, super helpful. We love you guys. So we want to bring more people in to work with you as well.
For sure. And I think something that we occasionally get questions about as different organizations are beginning to look at integrating with ORCID is, how do they put together a team? What kind of resources do they need to integrate with ORCID? And I was just wondering, maybe George, and leave this as a question for you, what does your team look like? How many people are working with you to manage and maintain the integration?
Well, on the operational side, we're really lean. We have an operational support for the API interfaces that's occurring. We have a help desk that can be contacted if something comes up. There are, knock on wood, there haven't been any technical issues, but there have been people that say, you know, I want my badge, or I got my badge this way or something, and then we have to look into see what we can do to make sure the ORCID record and the badging is staying synced. So we basically have a help desk on the support side. There any kinds of changes or updates that would occur? Glebe, can you talk about what you need programming side?
So yeah, for the support, as George mentioned, there are like just one operational support manager who actually solved in most cases and basically can ask for development help if it's necessary. At the beginning, when the integration has started, we got team of 3 or 4 people, like one developer, QA, manager, and basically me as an architect who were implementing the whole idea and architecting the solution. So definitely, in comparison with most of the projects, ORCID and Credly integration is low effort. And I believe in most cases you will be able to do it even with one person if you like not really short on time, but it's definitely possible.
And
But
I'll add something for the operationally, so you can see the relationships. Mount Tam Innovations is a partner within the United States. We operate to sell the services and functions of the Open edX, and our partner Raccoon Gang operates out of Ukraine primarily, and then all in other areas. But they are one of the top providers of the Open edX service because it's open source. It's about molding that open source platform to make it do what it needs to do. And so Gleb's team is so skilled, and that's why, knock on wood, we haven't had any problems at all, even though the integration is fairly complex in terms of the 3 servers that are communicating daily. And we're getting, hundreds of these badge updates per week.
great, thank you for all that information. And we love hearing about different open source software, and it's nice to hear that while the integration may be complex, that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs a lot of resources, or one person could manage it all themselves. I know sometimes our members feel that they don't have enough resources or time or the ability to integrate with ORCID, but it's good to hear that it is possible.
As one other thing to add, as one of a practice, and I think any of you would probably think this, we do check in weekly to verify that the counts are synchronized. That way we can very quickly identify any issues. We also support, because we have international users in the EU, GDPR, and that's part of the system. So we have check-ins to verify that everyone's record is secure that's in the system, and that everything's staying synced through manually reading reports from the various systems.
Thanks, George. Our next question, I think we can answer both from the NASA side and the ORCID side, is how does the NASA involvement with ORCID benefit researchers from academic institutions in developing countries? Now, Catherine, I believe that the course is anyone around the world is able to take it, correct?
Yes, that is correct. It is open, it is free, and once I stop sharing my screen, I'll drop the link in the chat. But if you do go to the science.nasa.gov link, then /open-science/tops, you'll see and can be directed to the actual course, openscience101.org. And anyone is available to take it and learn from it. And then once you go on that journey, you'll have just a wealth of knowledge to take you into other areas of other resources, other entities that are providing the data, the science, and be able to check that out. So it's each module is about 2.5 hours. There's 5 of them, so there's a total of 12 hours worth of content there. If you're new to the open science thought, you might have to take all 5 2.5 hour modules. But if you have some knowledge, it's possible for you to fast track through the modules, and you'll be presented with an option and then an assessment. And upon completion and passing of that assessment with a score, I think, of 80%, you'll move to the next one. But one of the things about fast tracking is you kind of miss out on some of the information that's provided within the content. So we do reference various amounts of organizations that provide open science information, whether it's data repositories or just general information about the theme. So definitely some good information once you dive in. Does that help?
Exactly. Oh yeah, definitely helps. And I think that the course is a great resource for not only researchers at academic institutions in developing countries, but from all over the globe and all different, you know, different, whether you're a funder or a publisher, you know, it's just got really good information about what open science is and what it means to participate in open science. So I would say that's the benefit to researchers, is it's a fantastic resource. And then once you complete the course through the integration, it's on your ORCID record, which is, you know, another piece of trusted data on your ORCID record.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. And I wanted to add, CJ mentioned this, but I wanted to tie this back into that question. The curriculum is on GitHub. You'll also be steered to it by the science.nasa.gov website. And once you access it, if you find that information might not be correct or might not explain the topic in the best way, there's always a pull request or an issue that can be generated, and we welcome your thoughts. We've received over 60 different requests and suggestions for how to present the information within the curriculum. And so it's live. We're integrating it. Sometimes it happens within 30 days, 45 days, but we're working to collapse that. And as CJ mentioned, we have the weekly meetings where we tag up and discuss and see how we can improve it and get the right information, the most current information within the curriculum. So please do that. Feedback is welcome. Thank you.
It's great to hear. I have shared the link for GitHub in the chat, and I've also shared the link to the course in the chat. It does look like we're entering the end of our time. I'll give our audience one final moment to share any questions they may have while I talk about our next webinar, which will be next Wednesday, sharing a link to it in the chat. Our data privacy officer, Ellen Patterson, will be joining us to talk about ORCID's updated privacy policy. And she'll also be holding a Q&A. So if you have any questions about privacy, the privacy policy, ORCID, we hope to see you there. I'm not seeing any other questions come through, so I just want to take this time now to thank all three of you for joining us today and sharing about the POPS initiative, the Open Science course, your integration with ORCID. We really appreciate all that you've had to share with us today, and we hope to see everyone at a future webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.